Hello and welcome to what I call a new video, and today we are going to be making a theory that is absolutely goddamn wrong. Now, what's the point in making a theory that is wrong? Well, we are not making this theory that is wrong by simply stating things that aren't true. We are going to be making a theory that is entirely possible within the information given inside of Deltarune. However, we are also making this theory so narratively idiotic and stupid that it will actively harm the game if it is true. And because Toby Fox is not an idiot, this will be wrong. This is supposed to show you that a lot of theories out there that are genuine sound specially like this one. So I didn't actually prepare a theory before making this video. So I'm going to go ahead and just kinda say this theory is about the knight. The knight's identity, perhaps. See, my proposition of the knight's identity is as follows. Because we already know that the knight, at least in the Darkner form, is a sort of shapeshifter, the actual appearance that the knight has in the 2 chapters it has appeared in doesn't actually matter. And I would also like to propose that if a Lightner goes inside the Dark World will shape them into what they want to be. That is the very reason that Chris is blue, because they want to be a monster, and monsters can be blue, and that's why they're blue in the Dark World. They are closer to the perfected image of themselves. And as such, the knight's shape is that of a shapeshifter. But that doesn't mean we have to discount every single detail. For example, the horns, also known as antlers. See, these antlers don't necessarily have to mean that it's a deer that is the knight. We can even say that because they are there, they want to be a deer, or perhaps want to be close to the ruling deer family in that specific town. Perhaps we have a Mayor Holiday loyalist who is the knight instead of Mayor Holiday, or someone that is a deer instead. With the antlers simply signifying that they want to be closer to the deer administration. But who actually fits that bill? Well, with the information that we know now, a lot of people fit that bill. Not necessarily, but we can't disprove that they don't fit that bill. Now, an obvious loyalist when it comes to the Mayor Holiday family is Chris Deltarune themselves. However, because we have seen Chris Deltarune and the knight in the same room, Chris cannot be the knight. Look at me, Chris cannot be the knight. Chris can't be the knight. So, who can we rule out as being the knight outside of Chris? Obviously, we can rule out Susie, we can also rule out Noelle and Carol Holiday, as all of them have an alibi, were basically in the same room as the knight, or couldn't have been in the knight's location at the time the knight appeared. Toriel, Undyne, obviously the 2 are a no-go. And that leaves us with the rest of the entire fucking town. However, something we know about the knight's appearance is that it is referred to the places in which they hide that a large person could fit inside. So that kind of means or implies that this knight figure is a large person. And if this knight figure is such a large person that it warrants it being mentioned twice in 2 separate chapters, especially 2 separate doors and 2 separate chapters, then I would wager that the knight is on the larger side. So who is large and could have a potential connection to the Holiday administration? Asgore! Yes indeed, Asgore is a large person. Asgore also technically has the opportunity to leave the Holiday estate and make the Dark Fountain. It's definitely close, but the opportunity exists. We also know that Rudy and Asgore are BFFs, which you do love to see if I do say so myself. And Chris would have an actual reason of working together with the knight. And the single prophecy that we got about the Flower King isn't actually about the secret boss or the boss of chapter 4. It is actually about the knight, because in chapter 5 of course, we will realize the actual identity of the knight, and that will be revealed to be the lonely Flower King. How can a king be a knight? Well, the Roaring Knight is nothing but a title, and a king can hold multiple titles at the same time. The lonely king of the flowers, Roaring Knight, that is Asgore. But then you might be asking, why would Asgore want to do all that? Well, it's very simple. The reason he got fired from the police force is because his inadequacy. He was unable to get Des back. Des died due to police negligence, which made her disappear from the house, followed by Carol cutting all contact with the Dreamer family, which meant that Toriel started arguing with Asgore, which then led to their divorce, which then led to Rudy not showing up anymore, and then Asriel left to college, leaving Chris and Toriel alone in their home. And now that Asriel is about to return, Asgore wants to make things right. He believes that the entirety of the reasoning of the divorce is just because of the disappearance of Des. So, if Asgore can bring Des back by being the knight, causing the roaring, which in some sort of twisted way may be able to bring her back, they will be able to get back together by the time that Asriel returns from college to see that his family is once again united. And Chris, of course, supports this wholeheartedly. Not only will their family come back together, but also they will have one of their friends back that died when they were young. And perhaps Asgore has also realized that something isn't correct with Chris. Something has taken over Chris, perhaps. And another part of the deal is that not only does Chris get back their family, get back their friends, but also gets rid of us. It's a three-way package deal. That's why they working with the nut. That's why I'm the bad guy. That's why Asgore the GOAT. What? Let's take a little step back here. The theory is entirely possible. The only real, questionable thing about this theory is that we don't know what the roaring will do and how it would possibly bring back Des, and the fact that there's a little bit of a close time span between Asgore being in the church and Asgore being at the Holiday Estate. But I do genuinely think that it is a possibility that Asgore just ran through the woods instead of taking the long way around, which Chris and Susie did. Mind you, we only see Asgore in two places at two specific times, because he's in the bathroom and on the top floor, and at the end where he's outside with everyone else. Asgore could have simply opened the two dark fountains in the time frame where we are at the Noel Estate and are not looking in the bathroom. Then he returned to the bathroom and did this old monologue thing, and that's what happened. And then after letting us go, he sprinted through the goddamn forest to go in that shit. This also explains, why they don't attack Chris that hard. The knight straight up annihilating Susie, destroying Ralsei, but when it comes to Chris, the knight's kinda like, hey yo buddy, you better go down. It whole makes sense, it's perfectly possible, but should it be true? No. Look, there's a lot of theories that a lot of people can make, and that can technically be true within the information that we have been given. There is a very big difference between theories that can't be possible, like Chris Knight, and theories that can technically be possible. However, sometimes theories do absolutely nothing but ruin the story. Is it technically possible that Asgore is simply a loyalist and therefore changes their appearance in the Dark World because the Knight is a shapeshifter anyway, so the physical description of the Knight doesn't really matter? Yes. Would it make a lot of sense in the narrative? No, because why would you build up a knight's shape, a knight's character design, and then make it so incredibly non-binding to the character it's based upon? Of course, the knight is going to look very different from the person that is actually the knight. However, features like the knight mask being a constant, mostly without, the whole screeching thing, are a thing that should be respected. For example, the antlers are a thing that should be respected. They are even respected in the weird bird transformation they do when they kidnap Undyne. The antlers are a constant part unless you talk about the ball. Would it make sense for Chris to cooperate with Asgore? Absolutely, but that's not very good. I would much rather have a more compelling reason for Chris to be working with the Knight. I mean, the entirety of Chapter 3 was probably just a ploy to get Undyne at the end. Because, Chris opened the door for Undyne at the end of Chapter 2, so they were expecting Undyne to show up. And probably also expecting the Knight to show up. Because they literally cough if the Knight is too shit at hitting us. Bro is literally like, wrap this shit up, damn. It's almost as if they are expecting this. They are actively holding back their attacks as well. I want to see why they do all of this. And I want it to be more compelling than there's my dad and my dad trying to make my family go happy together again. Like, come on. Deltarune has a bunch, and I mean a bunch of story potential, and Furies tend to kind of tunnel vision in on themselves and try to make all of Deltarune about a single thing. But Deltarune is just a lot of things that are going to interconnect, don't get me wrong, and I feel like all of these loose threads are going to come back by the end of chapter 7. However, we also have to realize these are a lot of different stories that we are dealing with, and if tunnel visioning on a single story and then making an entire thing out of it and that being your Fury, that's probably not going to be the case, because Furies like that don't really make a lot of sense. Within the context of Deltarune, I don't like these kind of Furies because there's layers upon layers upon layers of story within this game. And if we tunnel vision on someone like Asgore, sure, we can make the rest of the story fit this narrative of Asgore. However, kinda ass, you know? It would be basically wasting a lot of the potential that Deltarune has. And that's what I've seen a lot of Furies do. And I mean a goddamn lot of Furies. Here's one that is not really talked about because I'm pretty sure everyone agrees that it's kind of shit. But there was a Fury pre-chapter 3 and 4 that, you know, darkness are not really real. They are actors acting only to make us more happy, and they don't actually have any goals and only exists purely to make us happy. Which technically, that is true, but in the way that it is presented in chapter 4 and 3, it's obviously that the moral of the story isn't, yeah, those guys don't matter. The moral of the story is, those guys matter still. Like, it doesn't matter that they are objects, they still matter, they still have feelings in these dark worlds. One of the key storytelling principles of Undertale is that if you are just nice enough, if you simply don't kill, you'll end up in a situation that is the best situation. And Deltarune is the sister story of Undertale. So going against Undertale for the sake of going against Undertale makes literally no sense, even in Deltarune itself. If you want to make a point, of course you can make that point. And I feel like the Weird Root is making some sort of point related to that. However, the main story that isn't locked behind doing some weird and very specific stuff, that story is the story that most people are going to experience, and most people are going to only experience. The casual fan is not going to play the Weird Root. So that now we're on the same page. I want it also to be known that I am not discouraging people from being creative. Be as creative as you want to be. Don't shove it down my throat though. Some people really think their Fury is the shit and constantly like spam it everywhere inside of my throat and want me to react to it and make a Fury review of some kind. I'm gonna be absolutely honest, I couldn't care less. And I know saying that I couldn't care less feels like I'm being dismissive, but no, that's just the truth. I look at Furies, I look at a bunch of Furies. I'm trying to be as active as possible within the Deltarune community. However, if you try to shove your Fury down my throat with a stick, I will not consume. Because every time I do, I get served the shittiest meal of all time that doesn't make any sense within the story of Deltarune. Whoa-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho. Nevertheless, my fit goes absolutely goddamn hard! Cue the clown.